I am here with Rohit Chopra. He is one of the commissioners at the FTC who dissented from this settlement, in addition to his colleague, Rebecca Slaughter. Rohit, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ellen.
So you have a statement that is 20 pages long that outlines your reasons for dissenting, but essentially it seems to boil down to something that you wrote, which was that this lets Facebook off of the hook. Why?
Well, this settlement is full of giveaways and gifts for Facebook. There's a lot for their investors to celebrate. At the end of the day, this settlement does nothing to fix the fundamental incentives of their broken behavioral advertising model. It leads to surveillance, manipulation, and all sorts of problems for our democracy and our economy.
$5 billion doesn't sound like quite enough to fix all of those problems. What should be done instead? Is there a fine large enough to fix an assault on democracy?
Well, I don't think we should be focused so much on the money, because there's really no amount of money. We have to look at that business model. Facebook's business model is built on massive harvesting of personal data. And what's key here is that they are a repeat offender. And much of the settlement repeats the same settlement that happened in 2012. And we need to fix those fundamental problems. We need to put in some real restrictions on the data that they can actually collect. We need to make sure that they can't spawn scams like Cambridge Analytica, which engaged in massive interference in our elections. So we need to look at their business practices and not just focus on the headline dollar amount, which, investors can look at as a one-time charge.
When I spoke to FTC Chairman Joe Simons earlier, he said that the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, is being held personally accountable for these types of problems within the company, that there are better, stronger rules in place to prevent those types of actions from happening in the future. Why doesn't that go far enough?
Well, it's not clear how he's being held accountable when he's not named in this settlement, when he gets a blanket release from all misconduct that may have occurred. And this is unprecedented. We've not seen these type of settlements that give massive releases of liability to the whole company for known and unknown violations. And I just think that's fundamentally wrong.
When you talk about your concerns about Facebook's business model and how it enables essentially mass surveillance of consumers and of the American public, that sounds like a problem not just with Facebook's business model, but with many of these social media companies more broadly.
Well, that's exactly right. I think we're going to have to look hard about this behavioral advertising model, which essentially markets advertisements to a demographic of one. It allows companies to manipulate, and it allows them to have an unquenchable thirst for data. And that's a problem. Here with Facebook, they were told in 2012 they couldn't engage in some of these practices, and almost immediately they did. And I think they profited massively from it. It allowed them to solidify their dominance with advertisers and other key partners, and this settlement will not fix that. Mark Zuckerberg having to sign some paperwork to determine whether they are thinking about privacy, I just don't think that goes anywhere near where we have to go.
So what's the right remedy?
Well, I wanted to investigate further, really uncover what was on the executives and the directors' minds. Who was calling the shots? What was their motives? If we don't even get those answers, how are we going to really know what really happened? So much about this settlement we will not learn, because it is buried. It is essentially saying that here were some problems, we're going to pay some money, and the rest, everything else is let go. It's now going to turn to state AGs and global regulators who are now going to have to get to the bottom of it.
Simons talked about a balance that the commission faces in weighing what's in your power to actually do versus what you could potentially win in any type of court case. Are you worried that if you took this to the courts, if you investigated further, the FTC could lose and Facebook could then really be off the hook?
Well, let's look at a few years ago with a Google settlement where our penalty was more than 5 times what they earned from it. We have no analysis of the evidence of how much they earned from this. Without that key data, we do not really know what happened, and that's why I thought we need to keep going. We need to keep finding out what happened so that we can make the best case for either a settlement or going to court. So many times these big corporate settlements, there's a big penalty paid and everything moves on and nothing really happens. It's important that enforcers actually know what happened so that they can tell the public and justify these resolutions.
But this penalty is the biggest ever. So by what standard can you judge whether or not a penalty is the appropriate size?
Well, Facebook is one of the largest corporations on the planet. The FTC has never really gone after one of those before. So we can't judge it based on Facebook versus a small firm. And what bothers me is that it feels like there's disparate treatment. Look at Cambridge Analytica. We're suing them, we are holding individual executives accountable, and we are finding out the truth. And here, almost the same exact practices, we're letting them go.
Do you think that the FTC should be investigating these types of practices at other specific companies?
Well, this is going to be a fundamental issue for investors and policymakers. The effects of this model that engage in mass data collection, it is just not sustainable. It causes massive harm in so many ways, and we need to really ask ourselves, is this surveillance model sustainable? And if we can't solve that, then we're in trouble. Elections are coming up. There's more chances of violence and harm based on trafficking through these business models, and we have hard questions to answer.
Do you think the FTC has the power it needs to regulate these companies effectively?
Well, when it comes to repeat offenders, we have big powers, and that's why when it comes to Facebook, we did have a lot of tools, and I think we could have used them much more aggressively. But I'm not out there always begging for more authority. I want us to use the tools that we have and use them aggressively, because this has to be a top concern for our entire economy.